We talk about our latest test results on the 2020 Nissan Versa. We respond to your feedback about what's better, built-in in-car navigation or using your phone. And does ride height make a vehicle safer? Next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome back or welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
So last week, if you guys were listening or watching, we kind of reached out to you with a question regarding an audience member who had a question regarding the difference between in-car versus phone navigation. And specifically, were manufacturers looking to abandon the in-car navigation with so many people using their phones? And this particular manufacturer said, let us know. We're kind of on the fence of whether we should continue to offer it or not. So Mike Monticello asked you guys, what were your thoughts? And you guys responded in spades. We got so many responses, be it to our talkingcars@icloud.com email, on YouTube, and we so appreciated it. But the truth is, the tally was about 50-50, including this great video we got from Jules in State College, Pennsylvania.
Hey, Talking Cars, big fan of the show. Tune in pretty much every week to you guys. I have an interesting situation for the navigation. I have a Tesla Model Y, and then I also have a BMW X5. In the Tesla, I do prefer the Google Maps. Obviously, it's kind of the only choice. You can use your phone, but it's not as fluidly integrated. In the X5, however, I do use the wireless Apple CarPlay with Apple Maps. I like the look and feel of those maps better compared to the BMW maps. They look a little cartoonish. Not the biggest fan for me. My only complaint about using the Apple Maps in the BMW is they don't sync across to the instrument cluster or the heads-up display, so I wish they would fix that. My mother also falls in that same boat as me. She prefers using the Apple Maps over the BMW Maps. She is 54. She was able to figure out, she did most of it on her own. The BMW dealership did help her with a little process of getting that set up, but once she's set up, she's good to go and it's worked flawlessly for her. Thanks, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.
So Jules, depending on the car he was in, used one or the other. So Jake, just looking for your thoughts on what you prefer.
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts about that, but I mean, we've actually done some surveys of people of what they actually use. And yes, there is definitely a split, but actually there's a third option, which we found a lot of people, they use both.
Right.
So they actually complement each other because there's some things that the in-car nav does well and it doesn't do well. And the same thing with your phone. So, I mean, as an example, the in-car ones actually have better reception. So the GPS actually works better in your car. The data works better in your car. You're going to have data in places where you're not going to have it in your phone in your car just because of the placement of the antennas. The other thing is it's just integrated better. So, I mean, and certainly, viewers of this podcast certainly told us, and they noticed that it's nicely integrated when it's in the in-car system, right? I mean, you've got, sometimes the heads-up display is working with it. Sometimes you have things on your dashboard. You can't really do that with your phone. But where the phone really does well is, one, updates. They're always being updated. And two, when it comes to finding destinations, the phones do such a great job. So, there was a lot of really nice tips that, people were sending in to us. I mean, and we use it too. I mean, I know data is an issue when you're using a phone. I prefer, personally, I use my phone all the time. But, when you're traveling somewhere, so when I travel overseas, data is an issue. So what I always do is I download the maps beforehand, have them all, sometimes at the hotel, I could download the maps where I'm going the next day. That works. A lot of the viewers, are doing that too, and that saves in your data. And then I do run the data for traffic, and that's really, really tiny bits of data. I mean, you're not really using up your data plan for the kind of information.
Yeah. And that tip you gave about downloading maps ahead of time, that was something we did not mention, but absolutely many of you said, hey, download the map before you go. Well, you may not, depending on your signal, have like real-time navigation. You'll at least know where you are. So that's absolutely an option for people if you have not used that. I certainly have. I think we used it when we were in Scotland, a couple of years ago. We put the maps ahead. Emily, any thoughts from you on your preference?
I definitely prefer using my phone. But that could also just be in part because we move between cars so much that I'm never really super adept at whatever infotainment system that we're working with in the car. So I know my phone so much better. I can find things. I've already saved it on my phone. Like if I'm going somewhere, I've already like looked up the address or saved the address to my favorites and stuff. So it's already there. I'm not having to sit there and twiddle with the knobs and like slowly type out the address name on the infotainment and stuff like that. So for me, my preference is my phone, but I think that's because I'm much more familiar with the system there and the interface. So it's easier for me to understand and it's just easier for me to use. But that's also because with our newer cars, we're getting CarPlay. If I was still having to do it where I didn't have CarPlay and my phone is sitting down in the cup holder trying to navigate, like when I rent cars for business trips, if it doesn't have CarPlay and I'm having to do the downward glance constantly for how to get to the hotel, it irritates me so much. So it really depends on the situation. Like my husband's car doesn't have CarPlay and he prefers to like be able to update the maps there and stuff like that because like for me, it's totally a distraction. I'm like, I'm already in a place I don't know that well. When we went abroad, we also like either downloaded the maps or we would look up directions while we were still like at the Airbnb or at the hotel. And then I would just like print screen everything. Like I would print screen the directions, even if it was just like walking and the map to show me like where to make my turns and stuff like that. So that I would just have it on hand because I'm taking my phone everywhere with me, right? So
yeah, the learning curve is really important. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, when it comes to rental cars, geez, I mean, you know, when you reserve a rental car, I mean, I'm more interested in getting CarPlay than I am interested in getting like a roomy back seat. I mean, the kids, they can fit. But CarPlay is a necessity when it comes to some, you know, again, rental cars. Wow. Right. You're unfamiliar with where you're going. You're unfamiliar with the car. You want to be familiar with the navigation system. If it is your own car, totally different animal, especially if you've one of the nicer systems that has voice controls and you could program and you can say, take me home and it knows where your home is and things like that. So, right.
I'm that person that will walk around like in the rental car garage with my cable and my phone. And I'll like quickly plug in and turn the car on and see if it gives me CarPlay. Because I'm like, I just need to not get lost and not get into a crash. So I want to be able to see everything nice and clearly.
I pack my cell phone mount now when I go and rent a car, just in case.
Well, Jake, you bring up a good point. And Emily, you alluded to it about looking down. One of the things we've always said is whatever system you're using, make sure you're using it safely. You know, to have it here at eye level is so much easier than looking down in your cup holder. So an inexpensive cell phone mount when you're traveling, all of that. We absolutely heard what you both alluded to too, is depending on the car, some integrate it very well, some do not. And then with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, the ability to switch back and forth between them and some of the functionality in the car was not always the same. You know, sometimes you have to physically unplug to get out of CarPlay. Others make it very easy. It's just a button that says, hey, I want to go back to the car controls. So absolutely, we heard for manufacturers that are listening or watching, don't abandon in-car nav. There's half the population that loves it.
Not dead yet.
Not dead yet. You know, some are making it optional, but don't abandon it. People really still like it, depending on their circumstances, depending on the integration. So, and always use it safely. You know, pull over if you have to recalculating, you know, do that safely. So thank you so much again for your responses, whether you sent them to TalkingCars@iCloud.com email or responded on YouTube. It was wonderful. We love the engagement. In fact, we want to know, are there other things that you just don't like about the car you're driving? Maybe it's something we want to share with automakers. Maybe it's something we just want to talk about on the show, and there's a better way, as we learned in this case. So comments, let us know, what is it you don't like? So we really appreciate it. And whatever your system you're using, keep using it safely. So moving on, we'll go to From the Track. And this week, we're going to talk about our final test results of the 2020 Nissan Versa. So just to rattle off a few specs on the Versa, this is a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder with a continuously variable transmission, 122 horsepower, a little boost from what was previously 109. It's now only in the sedan version. There is no more Versa Note hatchback. Prices run from about $14,700 to $18,200, depending on how it's equipped. An RSV trim was kind of at the top with that 18,000 sticker. Included blind spot warning, Android Auto, and CarPlay capability. So Emily, you've happened to spend quite a bit of time in our Versa, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've had the car for like the past 2 weeks, and we've taken it for all of our little walks and stuff to get out of the house. I feel bad because I want to like the car because of the price point, and I feel like I keep hating on the low-end Nissan sedans, and I feel bad about it, but I kind of just can't help it because I really don't like this car. I found it really uncomfortable. And at first I was like, okay, maybe this is just me being really sensitive because of the pregnancy and everything just like hurts and I feel things a lot more. But that's not the case. The ride is really harsh and uncomfortable. You literally feel every single bump and jostle on the road. And it wasn't just me that felt that way. The other testers felt that way too. Like I tried to make sure I hadn't really read what we thought about the car until after I had been in it for a couple of days. So I
didn't want to lead the witness, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I just found it like way too uncomfortable. It's pretty cramped inside. You know, I've driven it. I've sat in the back seat with Micah, and there's just not a lot of rear cabin space for you to be comfortable for longer drives. There's annoying things about the car. Like the fact that there's no exterior trunk release. Like, I don't know why people like get away with not putting that there. I don't want to have to like always walk to the front of the car to get it or find my key fob or whatever. And just even the fact that there's very limited like cabin storage. My husband kept trying to like find somewhere to like, you know, maybe like stash his wallet or whatever, but there's no covered storage anywhere other than the glove compartment, which again, it's like, it's not like you couldn't have at least put a tiny pocket, but nope, not there either. There's just like small things that just kind of add up for everyday use though. But in terms of controls and stuff, really easy to use. Everything's like basic knobs and, you know, all that kind of stuff is great about the car. But it wouldn't be a car that I bought because I didn't enjoy it.
Sounds like you enjoyed walking better.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually did.
You took it to the walk and then extended the walk.
Yeah. It's like I might just walk home instead of get back in the car.
There is no doubt it is a small car with a small engine. But Jake, any elaboration on the Versa?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, it's not like this is a Nissan hate fest because, right. I mean, the Sentra is actually quite nice. I mean, you know, if it's the year of Nissan, if it's 2020, but it's like the best of Nissan and the worst of Nissan, you know. The Sentra, they reinvented it, and it's sporty and it's fun, and they really made it more substantial. Not so much when it comes to the Versa, and that's really disappointing because the Versa actually wasn't always kind of that bargain basement, the cheapest vehicle you could get at the rental company. When they first launched, it was actually quite nice inside. I don't know if you remember our test that, you know, had the velour inside. It was like soft touch surfaces. And then the Note actually wasn't that bad, the Versa Note, but that's gone. And it's kind of back to this kind of not fun, stiff riding vehicle. And look, I mean, there are vehicles that are inexpensive on the market. You don't have to settle for something like this. I mean, for me, I would take a Hyundai Venue, actually. I mean, that's kind of I mean, sure, it's not riding plush, but it's kind of has some utility and it's kind of fun to drive. And you could get that for a very similar price. So, yeah, not a lot going for this one.
Yeah, I have friends who many years ago had asked me, they were looking for a commuter car, a couple, they were empty nesters, their kids had gone. And I recommended years ago a Versa to this couple, and they still have it. They still love it. I remember us talking about how roomy it was. While it still has some of the headroom, it's not as roomy as it once was. I do appreciate, Emily, what you said about the simplicity. Because it's a less expensive, you don't get into the complicated controls. Everything's super simple, standard gear selector, all simple controls. And then some standard safety, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking. I wish it was slightly better because everything you said, Emily, the ride, the seats, that was all reflected in our scoring. And I wish it was slightly better because to me, it seems like it could have been a great first car. But I agree with you, Jake. There are higher scoring, better options than the Nissan Versa. So of course, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you need something just as a mode of transportation, it will suffice.
Right.
But I wouldn't recommend if you have a long commute or if you want like any creature comforts.
And there's other options that suffice better.
That suffice better.
Well, what's interesting too, being so small, you think you get great fuel economy, and it's not bad, but it's very similar to what you'd get in a competitive midsize car, actually. So you're not really getting a big advantage for that size, which is kind of strange.
So all of these details, of course, if you're looking at the Versa, are at consumerreports.org, the full road test. So take it in and see, it might be for you, but you'll see all of the details. So moving on to your questions. As always, keep them coming. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. We love the videos. We love the written. And this week we are going to start with a video question from Ken in Rockville, Maryland.
Hi, Talking Cars. A few years ago, we realized that our Mazda 6 was not going to be big enough to take us on multi-week vacations across the country. So we bought a minivan. They're great, but now I have a feel for the open air. I want it to be free. Do you have any suggestions for a used convertible, comfortable, that can seat four, probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 range? Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Okay, so Ken's looking for a little open air, but 4 seats. Emily, any thoughts?
So my first reaction to Ken's video was, I don't think what you're looking for exists in the marketplace. I had a hard time reconciling comfortable with 4 seats because every convertible that I've seen or every test car that we've had that's a convertible that has a back seat, it's not a comfortable back seat by any regard. So I feel like you're going to have to compromise somewhere. And most likely that whoever takes the brunt of that compromise is going to be who's in your back seat. So depending on how much you love your children or whoever it is that you're putting back there, it may sway your decision on whether or not you really want this to be a 4-seater. So that aside, if you completely disregard rear seat comfort and only look at front seat comfort, as well as, just looking at things like reliability of the vehicle and how it did overall for testing, personally, I like the Mustang. I had a lot of fun when we had our Mustang at the track. It was like one of the first cars, like when I first joined at the track. And I think it's a lot of fun to drive. I recommended the 2018 model year. Don't get the 2015 because that's the redesign year. And if I learned anything from Jake, it's you never buy redesign years.
Someone's paying attention to what I say. I love this.
Sometimes. Don't get a big head about it. It's kind of right at the top of your price range. So something to consider, how much you're going to be willing to go out of that range or like be right at the tippy top of it and negotiate that down. But the front seat comfort was very good, just not so great for the rear seat comfort. And you can get it convertible style, which is great. So it sort of checks off the things that he wanted.
Right. And he would be very cool because obviously people that have Mustangs are especially cool.
Yes, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Yes. My parents have a Mustang convertible.
And they are cool. cool. See?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Did you have a different option, Jake, for Ken?
Well, I mean, the Mustang convertible actually is a good option, and that's actually what I recommended for my parents. But the whole thing about, I agree with you, Emily. I mean, comfortable in 4 seats is tough. When it comes to roomy rear seats, you could get a Jeep Wrangler, and that's a convertible, and that's a roomy rear seat. I would not say it's comfortable. And then, of course, there's this other piece that we have to talk about because we're Consumer Reports is reliability. And that's not one where you're going to be, doing really great. However, with a Jeep Wrangler, you could kind of fix it with a rock, as Jeremy Clarkson would say. So that they got that going for it. But I mean, there's other options. I mean, the thing about the convertible is, if it's not your daily commuter and it's some kind of, think about kind of like instead of getting a motorboat, go around on the weekends, you have something kind of just fun. I mean, maybe the reliability isn't such a big deal to you. It's not your commuter car. So I mean, there's other options you could look at too. You could look at an Audi A5 convertible. That is a really, really nice vehicle. A 3 Series convertible is nice too. But I mean, I actually was looking at listings and you could find quite a bit of A5s. We were talking probably about 5 or 6 years old, but you could get in your price range, not terribly unreliable. If something goes wrong, probably a little more expensive to fix. But you could consider it.
Yeah, I was right where you were, Jake. What I had written down was a 2016 Audi A5. So a decent rear seat, again, probably not what we would call roomy, decent trunk, good reliability, good owner satisfaction. People really like it. So I was with you, but I had to laugh because when I first started thinking about it, what car came to mind? It's the Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet. I don't know if anyone's
There's
ever,
a popular
see
one.
them, but there was a not popular vehicle. You see it sometimes and you have to do a double take. Like, what is that? And they're very rare, but I found it funny because that would meet all of Ken's requirements.
So I got to throw out a shout out to my mom because she has always had a 4-seat convertible going back. So before the Mustang, it was a PT Cruiser convertible.
Oh, yes.
Before that, I think it was another Mustang convertible. Before that, it was a Volkswagen Rabbit convertible. And then go way back, it was a Chrysler 300 convertible. So
Nice.
We definitely have a long history.
Basically, your mom's just been cool her whole life.
Yes, she is. Yes, still is.
Cooler now that she has the Mustang, but yeah.
Probably cooler than me, I think. That's a low bar.
So Ken, a tough ask, but hopefully we've given you at least some options to think about. And thank you so much for your question. The next question is from Kevin, and he writes, I'm curious about the longevity of airbags in older cars. Do these systems need any maintenance or inspection to function properly in the event of a crash? I drive an 06 Toyota Tacoma, and I want to feel confident that its airbags will work. Emily, do you have any answer for Kevin?
I do. So I had to phone a friend and reach out to one of my colleagues who used to work for an airbag manufacturer and now works for a vehicle manufacturer. And essentially what he said was, as long as there hasn't been a recall on your airbag, it should be performing fine. And the way you know that it's not, or that you need to get it checked, is that there is an airbag fault warning light that will pop up on your dash. And essentially, you should see this light come on every time you turn the car on. And every time you turn the car on, your vehicle is checking that electrical connection that would initiate airbag inflation. And if the resistance for that connection isn't up to spec, then that light will stay on, or it'll come on during your drive. And if you see that airbag fault light persists on your dash, then you should definitely take it in to get checked. But otherwise, it should be working fine. It will inflate, if you were to get into a crash, despite the age of your vehicle. And really, that's what that indicator light is there for.
Great, simple answer. So you want it to come on and go off, and then you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it does its check. Great. Thank you very much. So our next question is from Ahmad from Moorhead, Kentucky. I'm currently cross-shopping the Toyota Highlander and Kia Telluride. I'm leaning towards the Telluride, but I am concerned about long-term reliability. I know the Toyotas have a history of great reliability, but will the Kia be in the same ballpark? I'd love to hear from you, especially Jake Fisher. So, Ahmad, you ask and you shall receive. So, Jake Fisher, what do you got for your number one fan?
Maybe my only fan. Well, thanks for the question. And in addition to my mom, I have a fan. So it's a great question. I would not be concerned about getting the Telluride. Hyundai, Kia, the reliability has been quite good. But ballpark depends how big the ballpark is. The truth is, there are many choices that are reliable, and I would say Hyundai, Kia certainly in that. Mazda, Subaru, they're making reliable vehicles. It all depends on how long you intend to keep it. And if you're the type of person that really wants to get 150,000 miles on the vehicle or really just be truly trouble-free, there's reliable vehicles, and then there's Toyota. Toyota really does stand apart. I mean, there's a reason why, years and years of our data is just showing that Toyota just is always number one. So they really, it's all about weighing these things. Toyota, maybe they're not always the most exciting vehicles, but it's the price you pay for getting something that's really much more bulletproof than other cars. So, I mean, don't feel bad about getting the Telluride, but if you want the best in terms of reliability, probably go for the Toyota.
So Toyota hits it out of the ballpark.
There you go. Very, very well done.
That. Thanks. You're welcome. You're
Killing
welcome.
me, Smalls.
And our last question is from Craig. My wife and I are planning on starting a family and are wondering if there is anything in the design of a pickup truck that would make it safer than something like a sedan. Does something like the ride height make a difference? So certainly, Craig, safety is such a broad question. In particular, we're always talking about the balance of crash avoidance versus crash worthiness. So in that, I looked kind of at our performance data on two very popular, very reliable vehicles, the Toyota Camry and the Toyota Tacoma, just to do some differences. And in performance, and again, getting to that crash avoidance, the Camry weighs 3,300 pounds, the Tacoma 4,449. So Tacoma's got the benefit in terms of mass. But emergency handling score, keep in mind our emergency handling involves, not only accident avoidance, but kind of that limit, when will it lose grip? How forgiving is it to the average driver? Should it lose grip? And all of these have stability control. But emergency handling for the Toyota Camry is a 3 or a 4 out of 5 score. For the Tacoma, it's barely a 2 out of 5 score. Braking distances are about 20 feet longer on the Tacoma than they are on the Camry. Child safety, you talked about, you're going to have to be putting child seats on. Again, better for the Camry than the Tacoma. The Camry is an IIHF, now we're getting to crash worthiness, top safety pick plus, meaning it scores good, their highest score across the board for all of their crash metrics. The Tacoma is a top safety pick. It does not score nearly as well for the IHS small overlap on the passenger side. And then again, the new car assessment program, the safercar.gov star scores that the government does, the Camry is 5 stars and the Tacoma is 4. So in terms of just raw data, I would absolutely skew toward the sedan because I think even though I'm using these very specific examples, you'd see similar trends in other sedan pickup comparisons. So Jake, any thoughts for Craig on pickup versus sedan?
Well, I mean, you got the data display there, and the data speaks for itself. I think the way to think about it, though, is, there's two pieces. Like you say, there's will it help me avoid a crash? Or will it protect me in a crash? Completely different things. The ones that are of helping you avoid, these are cars. These are something that handles well and low to the ground and all those. How will it do in a crash? Now it gets even more complicated. What kind of a crash is it? Now, if your mental model of a crash is small car, pickup truck crashing into each other head on, okay, pickup truck, gonna win. High pickup truck, gonna win.
Classic physics problem.
Classic physics, absolutely, right? I mean,
1,000 more pounds of mass, right? Yeah.
But here's the thing. That is not the majority of fatalities. That is not the majority of crashes that happen. So I think you really have to kind of think about all the different ways. And when it comes to actually pickup trucks and SUVs, the majority of fatalities are single vehicle crashes. So this is not, so there's the head on, but then there's the side swipe and all these different types of things. But when you're talking about a single vehicle, this is, well, a lot of them, they're rolling over or they're going off the road or they're crashing into a tree. And you know what? Even if you mentioned advantage of mass. Well, if, again, Emily calling out physics, right? I mean, when you have the physics, when you have more mass, it's harder to make that stop. So if it's hitting the tree, I mean, there's more momentum. It's going to...
Especially against something that's not going to move.
Right. So you can't choose the type of crash you're going to be in.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really a thing. But overall, I completely agree. You're going to be safer. You're going to be better off in a car. And
I think too, with, if you're planning on this being your family vehicle, sometimes people don't give as much credit to the IHS small overlap test for the passenger side, right? Because it's a newer test and vehicles are kind of, they're getting up to speed, which is fine. And people have asked this question before, like, well, how much does this passenger side test really matter? It matters if you're having a front passenger. So like the argument that I've made before, which Jake totally reiterated, is you don't get to choose your type of crash. You don't get to choose which side of the vehicle you're going to get hit on. You don't get to choose the speeds. You don't get to choose if you're in a single or multiple vehicle, crash. And if you're not going to make this a vehicle that's strictly a commuter vehicle where you are the only person ever in the car and therefore you are the driver and there's no one else, then sure, maybe the passenger side doesn't matter as much to you. But if this is intended to be your family car and you're likely going to have, your spouse in that front passenger seat or yourself in that front passenger seat, then that test result matters. You want it to be the top rated for your family if that's going to be the vehicle that everyone's going to be in. So I think, taking all of those pieces together is really important. Like you need to get a holistic view of the vehicle when you're making that decision.
I love this question. And I think, it's very interesting because right now, Emily's driving the Versa. I happen to be driving a Silverado. And when you drive a full-size pickup truck, you feel safer.
You feel on top of the world.
You feel on top of the world. You feel safer. It gives you that feeling. And I think it's so important not to shop by the feeling, but actually look at the data and look at the physics of it. But I understand, why a lot of people feel that way and they want to have a lot of metal around them. It feels right.
The challenge there is now because you feel safer, it can also make you more prone to making less safe choices as a driver. And so it all just kind of, it's interesting. It's a very complicated question because it's not just the science of it. There's also sort of the psychology that comes with it.
Absolutely.
You end up with this inflated confidence as a driver, I can take on the world. And so I'm invincible, which is actually a very dangerous mindset to have as a driver because you need to be extra careful, right? You need to be extra vigilant. So I'm glad you brought that up.
This is getting deep quick, but I absolutely agree. It's the psychology of it. And I'll throw one other piece on it. When you're driving a large vehicle, whether or not it's a full-size SUV or a pickup truck, and you're cruising along on a highway, I'm driving 65 or 70 on the highway, it's quiet. You don't feel like you're going that fast. You get in that Versa, you're going same speed, and you're like, oh, I better slow down this thing,
I feel it. I assure you, I feel it.
So yeah, you see these large, heavy vehicles going fast, and it doesn't take much. Look down on that phone, and all of a sudden it goes off the side, and it's rolling over, and it takes a lot to make it stop. So.
And we assure Craig that as he starts his family, this will be the first of many tough decisions about balancing safety and practicality versus what you might have gotten as a single person. To your point, Emily.
And it'll be so much easier for you to install your car seats in that sedan than it will be in the pickup truck, especially down the road when you have to start dealing with tether anchors, and it's a hot mess.
Unless you get a 4-seat convertible, because then you can take the top.
Just wrapping it back.
Go back to the other question. No,
Unless you get the Murano Cross Cabriolet, then you'll be good.
There you go.
So,
Then
Craig, there you go. In general, I think our consensus is the sedan. So, good luck with your shopping. As always, thank you all for your questions. Keep them coming. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. That will do it for this episode. Keep watching, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.